Hey guys, hope you're all doing well. Now for today's video, I wanted to talk about a Jurassic Park movie that never got made. This is actually the project that Steven Spielberg was working on that kind of reinvigorated my hope that JP4 would eventually come out one day. And it eventually did with Colin Trevorrow's Jurassic World. However, a good 5 years or so before all of that, a completely different film was in development, one that would only wind up being abandoned and all but forgotten in the years following its conception. For those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, the road to Jurassic World was paved with tons of canceled Jurassic movies that were in various stages of development behind the scenes. However, after a long period in time, it really looked like this fourth Jurassic Park movie may never actually come out. I know that for me personally, I said to myself that if they don't actually have anything they're working on at the beginning of the 2010s, then I'm just going to give up hope on anything ever happening. Well, lo and behold, not too long after that, Steven Spielberg himself actually made a pretty big announcement in relation to Jurassic Park 4. Specifically that he'd actually been actively working on it and that the movie would be due out to release in just a couple of years' time. Soon after, a screenwriter by the name of Mark Protosevich was actually revealed to have been working with Spielberg on developing the film, one that would bring the franchise back from the dead and totally revitalize its life in front of the global audience. This version of Jurassic Park 4, of course, never made it to the big screen. And in his own words, none of what Mark Protosevich brought to the table was used. By the time Rick Jaffa and Amanda Silver showed up to work on the movie, it was a completely different beast. Now, this leaves a lot of questions that are just begging to be answered about the work Mark Protosevich did on JP4, because it's essentially a story that never really got shown off in the sequel. Now, at the time, Kathleen Kennedy was actually interviewed and asked about the current status of JP4 around the time Mark left the project, and despite Protosevich stating that he'd written 2 story treatments for the film, both Spielberg and Kennedy had ultimately stated that they decided to go in another direction. Steven was hoping on getting someone on board to Jurassic before he went off to make Lincoln, but ultimately that just didn't happen. Now, what did happen around this time was actually a wide variety of dinosaur and Jurassic Park related projects that were connected with either the Jurassic IP or Steven Spielberg himself. 2011 saw the release of the single-season show Terra Nova that the director executive produced, and Telltale's Jurassic Park the Game came out shortly after to some pretty mixed reviews. Hasbro also made a point of putting out brand new Jurassic Park dinosaur toys at the time. However, their release was notably staggered and kind of all over the place. It's believed by some that this early toy line was actually supposed to help market a new Jurassic movie that was being worked on at the time, which would line up with what Mark Protosevich was working on behind the scenes back then as well. Of course, that whole toy line eventually got mixed up with G.I. Joe, and it just got really weird after that. Now, as for the actual content and plot of Mark Protosevich's version of Jurassic Park 4, I think many of the core ideas that Steven Spielberg had wanted to be used in that movie actually weren't thought out just yet. From the open theme park, to the guy training raptors, to the big bad dinosaur that would tear it all down. From what I've heard surrounding this project, the goal of this movie may have actually featured a team of InGen people coming onto Isla Nublar and actually taking back the island from the dinosaurs in order to build a new theme park. This is also kind of the plot of that Jurassic Park arcade game from 2015, only a giant volcano was integrated into that and you're trying to save the animals. So it's slightly different. If we go back even further to the pitch trailer with the Quetzalcoatlus that actually kicked off this new era of Jurassic development, the entire goal of the new series of movies was to move the dinosaurs off of the islands and get them onto the mainland. And if what I've heard is to be believed, or at the very least entertained, it looks like at some point in time, the idea was to actually kick the trilogy off with a team of guys catching dinosaurs on Nublar before the new park was even opened, which I guess could have been in the sequel, but hey, this is getting way too speculative when we don't have any tangible proof to back it up. I guess in summary, what Mark Protosevich brought to the table for Jurassic Park 4 is something of a mystery at this given point in time. We don't really have any concrete stuff to tell us what exactly it was about. However, we do know way more about what happened after. And since Mark says himself that none of what he wrote was integrated into Jurassic World, it just leaves me as a fan wondering what exactly his story treatments looked like back then. Anyways guys, that's pretty much all we know. This is a Jurassic movie that's far away from John Sayles' script, while still being relatively ahead of what Colin Trevorrow would bring to the franchise a few years later. It's in a very weird point in the series' history that I don't actually see get talked about too much, but I thought this info would be interesting enough to share with y'all today. So, what do all of you guys think? What do you think about the development of Mark Protosevich's script for JP4? What do you think the movie actually could have been about? And why do you think they ultimately chose the Rick Jaffa and Amanda Silver version to take over this? Personally, I think that any ideas revolving actually catching dinosaurs on Nublar before a new theme park would have been too similar to The Lost World, but I also don't even know if these script ideas are even true. I believe they are, but at the end of the day, we don't have any proof to back it up. With that being said, whatever your own thoughts and opinions on all of this info happens to be, I'd love to hear them in the comments down below. Now before I go, I'd like to thank all of my game wardens, as well as all of my InGen executives. I'd also like to thank all of my park workers and InGen hunters as well. Guys, it seriously means the world to me that you all continue to support what I do, and I never want you to ever forget that. Now, I'd like to thank you all for watching today's video, and hope that you all enjoyed the content. If you feel like I deserve it, I'd appreciate the like and hope that you'll consider subscribing if you're interested in hearing from me again. I'll see you all in the next video, guys, and as always, take it easy.